Hi, I'm Steve, and welcome to the Vicenta Talks podcast, where we talk to our community about navigating tech change and making forward-thinking choices. Okay, today's podcasts, we have Dan Morris from MYTIME Young Carers, a charity that is based down in Dorset but has a much wider reach these days. And actually, funny enough, today featuring on the BBC Morning Live programme for part of Young Carers Day. So Dan, listen, thanks for giving some time up today, because I know it's been a busy day in terms of what you're doing, but really lovely to have you with us, and really excited to have a chat about some of the things that the charity is doing, but also some of the challenges that you've faced over the last few years.
Right.
Can we start by perhaps you just telling us a little bit about MyTime and what the charity does and what you do within the charity and stuff like
Of
that?
course. So MyTime are a young carer focused charity. We run various programs. Some are young carer facing and some are professional facing. We have our Making Memories and Employability, which are our young carer offer. So traditionally it would be called Respite, but we don't call it Respite. It's opportunities and activities. And then our Employability program focuses on career transitions, progression, what they want to do in their futures, and helps break the backbone of some of the institutionalization that falls with young carers when they're thinking about what they do with their lives in the future.
Yeah.
Those are our young carer facing offers. We then have a schools program and a community program, which are focused more on upskilling and educating professionals, because one of the fundamental issues is that people don't know who young carers are.
Absolutely. One of the first things that when I first started talking and working with you guys, is that it's almost a light bulb moment that you don't even realise until that. So
we see it even today. You deliver a training session to a group of professionals, whether that's a sports coach or a teacher, and you see that moment of, oh, that child, oh, that reason, or oh, I wonder if, and we still see that today, even after sort of 6 years of quite intense. It's quite intense training. Identification is still a massive issue, and raising awareness is still fundamentally what we need to do as an entire nation, not even just locally, just across the country. The data, which I can talk about another time or later, underpins the disparity of understanding.
Yeah.
But as an organisation, being Dorset based and trying to have a national voice does come with its challenges, because we're not based in London or Manchester or anywhere central. So
I think it's a good thing.
I personally,
Honestly,
feel like it changes the narrative when you do get the Dorset charity rock up at these, the House of Commons, or
at government level, it's certainly been looking good.
It does indeed. But that is where we are now. We have realised that locally we've got some good provision and some good systems. Now it's about making sure everyone else has the same.
Yeah. So perhaps just unpack a little bit of that for me in terms of you talked a weeny bit about that now, but I'm really conscious in terms of the two really big elements that that MyTime focus on. That I think that they completely go hand in glove. And it wouldn't work. You guys wouldn't work if you didn't have that hand in glove. You completely get it of how that's supposed to work, but actually you've got this, as you say, this institutional education, which goes past institution and goes, you say, up into government and actually out wider to a wider audience to just try and get people's visibility. Part of this, hopefully, is to get some visibility for the charity out there in terms of just people that have never even think about this before. But you've actually got that, you called it at the beginning respite, but it's not really respite, which is actually all of the things that are really meaningful to children in terms of not only the identification, but also giving them the opportunity to have space and thing to be able to talk about the things that they do.
Yeah, I think making memories as a concept has developed over time. I think originally we thought it was exactly what we don't call it as respite. It's an opportunity for a young carer to come to an activity day and have a break. Over time, I think COVID has been a huge factor.
Yeah.
And I think the emerging mental health crisis has also led to us understanding that it's far wider than just a day out. It's a community. It's a sense of belonging. It's the opportunity to meet other children who are going through the same thing. So young carers meeting each other.
Yeah.
It's also the impact it has on the wider family. Parents tell us that child having the opportunity to go and do something eases pressure on the wider family unit. So it's not just direct impact on the child, but it's actually impacting the entire, siblings and parents at home.
Completely.
I think making memories is it's almost a universal offer that any young carer, no matter their degree of caring responsibility, is eligible for support with MYTIME.
Fantastic.
Which I think is
neither this impressive.
My own background. I was a teacher and I was a young carer. And as a young carer, I didn't know I was a young carer, firstly. And I found out when I was 30.
Wow.
Through a conversation with our CEO at a gym, as you do. And as a teacher of 10 years, I received no training around who young carers are.
So you saw both sides?
I've seen both sides, but I would say I've seen both sides retrospectively as opposed to actively. When I was a teacher, I was so unaware that none of my teaching practices or how I worked with young people reflected what I know now. And my own experiences as a young carer very much detached to my own school experiences. I just kept it very hidden. So,
which is the norm, isn't it?
Definitely. I think we have seen young people are far better at coming forward and talking and starting to ask for help. I think COVID is, for all its negatives, one of the positives is people are seeking help. There are better systems in place. There aren't enough systems and there aren't enough spaces, but it's a different problem. I was a young carer for my entire family unit at different times. My dad's an addict, a drug addict, Class A drug addict, and alcoholic. And that fluctuated over, he's still acting now in certain ways. As many young carers will tell you that you meet, you build a resilience to what happens in the home, and they understand how to operate day to day. And I think what we're trying to do is identify them as early as possible. Rather than having to intervene when they get to 14, 15, 16, when there's already been disengagement with school, maybe battles with local authority.
Yeah, there's a legacy of problem that you then got to try and battle through.
Yeah, and actually having someone accessing support when they're open to support as opposed to they need support, you get a different response.
Yeah.
And you see differences in how they identify as a young carer. So do they hold it proud? Do they hold it hidden?
Yeah.
And there's not one right or wrong answer. For me, I don't necessarily associate myself as a young carer because I didn't have the label. But when I reflect on what I did day to day,
you were.
I was 100%.
Do you know, it's really funny you should say that. So I wasn't ever a young carer, but obviously in later life, my dad, who has now passed, had dementia.
Right.
And that was a 10-year journey. They call it the long goodbye. And has it affected me? It's really weird. Now several years have passed.
Yeah, of course.
I can say there is definitely a legacy in me of the emotional roller coaster of looking after him and seeing that I didn't consider myself a carer at the time.
Yeah.
You were in the moment. It's actually it's looking back on it and going, okay, that left a mark. That has left a mark.
Yeah, and you'll see one of our biggest battles, I think, is where there's a lack of understanding in society at times. People think of caring for a young carer as a slightly archaic definition of, are they cooking, are they cleaning, I categorically will focus our support around those who are being impacted emotionally, those that are being impacted mentally. I don't think a child necessarily has to be doing physical caring tasks to be considered a young carer.
No.
You live at home with someone who has a need or a physical disability or is suffering with mental health, there's going to be an impact.
Yeah.
Who are we?
Do you know what? I've never thought of that and the work you do.
Yeah.
But you're right. The cleaning and the caring and the making sure the medicine and the washing is tasks which actually then impact back on an emotional response that person's got to cope with.
And we'd never say that an emotional caring role is more impactful than a physical, or physical is more impactful than an emotional. They are equitable.
Totally.
It doesn't matter, because I'm really lucky. My mum was absolutely incredible. I've got 2 small children myself. She had 3 boys. I don't know how she functioned.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a very strong family unit, and God, I get to a Saturday or Sunday, it's like, Mum, can you see, I've been on my own for a couple of hours. She had weeks on end where my dad would disappear.
Yeah.
And she would hold 3 quite intense boys.
Yeah.
To account. In school, we were attending football club, we were doing all the things.
Yeah.
It was hidden.
Yeah.
She would have benefited from some help, but the stigma that falls around addiction, drugs and alcohol at that time wasn't one that she was willing to go for. But yeah, whether a young carer or whether anyone who's thinking about a child they might know has a physical responsibility of practical tasks and dropping off siblings, or one where they're just emotionally impacted, don't think that one is
Bigger than
the other. Yeah,
absolutely right.
Still talk to them about what support they need, because the support might be different. It might be they need help with the physical task. It might be they need help just on a day-to-day basis to talk to someone. They might need a trusted adult that they can, you know, we all have the person we can vent to.
Totally. And it's finding the right space to do that as well as the right.
Yeah.
Now, you've been doing that in schools now in terms of making schools aware and actually getting the training. The sort of formalised training you're now putting together and that you have put together is obviously really smart. Let's talk a little bit about the background of the charity in terms of so how do you we know what the cause is now. We know what you are doing to actually make a difference. But actually you need an organisation behind you and systems behind you, and as the charity grows, the whole thing becomes more complex and it becomes an animal of its own right in that respect. And I know that's something that from an operations perspective, where you now do that, is something that you're now really starting to ingrain in terms of that. Tell us a little bit about the journey that the charity has been on in terms of making sure that it's got the right building blocks in place to support it. Because actually, we talk to quite a lot of charities. And, one of the things that I try to always instill, I mean, partly because of all the stuff that we've done together and the learning that you've given me is that actually the biggest danger you have in continuing to fulfill the service to your service users is the fact that the structure underneath and the systems underneath have not developed with it.
Yeah.
And we're all very aware that charities, every single pound that goes in is either donated or goes in a tin or goes in a bucket. You want to give that pound to the service user. You don't want to spend it on anything else. Get it. But actually, you do have to spend some money. And if you don't, there's a real danger.
I think coming out of school into a charity was a big change. You come from a set organisation to something which is, I guess at the time was still in its infancy and was growing.
Yeah.
So I think to start with, got to give her such credit. Our CEO, Krista, is the visionary. She identified the problem really early on, taking a job.
Yeah. And it's anybody watching this, okay, she's going to be a dame at some point.
There must be an OV coming soon.
It's got to be something.
But she spent a lot of time reading, realised there was a problem, and developed the first iterations of things like the Level Up program, which was a school's work, the Making Memories program, where we have a centre in Dorset that kids used to come to, and the employability program. She realised there was a problem that no one knew who young carers were, and started that really early work, and generated quite a lot of local interest, which meant that she got funding to grow the organisation to 3 of them, to 4 of them, to 5 of them. And it happened over COVID, and it happened quite slow. And I know people like yourselves jumped in COVID.
Yep.
Supported with providing laptops to young carers and that little bit of tech support that an organisation that has, and I think this is really important to stress it, some of these charities have no expertise. I would still say to this day, we don't have an internal expert around the systems and computers and tech. We have myself as head of operations, and I've self-taught and I've learned from your team and through various things. And yeah, I've done the right job of it. But a lot of charities will lack the expert that they need. And there's been a lot of learning through conversations that we've had, well, I've had with other supporters and providers. And I think anyone who's out there listening thinking, oh, we could do some other charity. The thing that's helped us most is that, I know you said about not bigging up too much, but it's about not selling a product. And the thing we've learned from most is the support and advice and flexibility that we've been given from different people. That we need to introduce Teams, we need to use SharePoint, and not go in, here's a white label product, put it in place and a crack on it. Well, how would it work?
Yeah. Why should you use it that way?
Exactly.
What are the pitfalls?
Exactly.
The benefits.
So we've gone through this journey of, we know we want to scale and grow, but we need some systems behind us. And you go from being a reactive, opportunity-based charity to having to be slightly more planned, slightly more
Proactive.
considered, proactive in terms of decision making.
Yeah.
And going, we're not going to do that this year because we can't. And like you said, sometimes we grow the back end too much, and then the front end of funding, and funding is volatile for charities, doesn't keep up with the back end, and suddenly you've got a bloated team and you haven't got enough income to keep running. So you have to be really considered with your growth and movement. I sort of see it as this
ebb and flow.
real
ebb and flow.
Really, and it's sort of you have to expand and contract, and each time you grow again, you get slightly bigger. But the only way you can do that is by having people that understand some of the things that we didn't understand, like how do we collect better data? How do we make sure that our service users are interacting with our systems, firstly in a really accessible way, but also in a way that enables us to do our jobs really well?
Yeah. Like safeguarding issues is a great example, isn't it? You've got a plethora of information that comes into the charity. Some of it is for more wide consumption. Some of it really has to be locked down in terms of some of that safeguarding stuff.
Yeah, and we've gone through different iterations of having a CRM and transition to a new CRM. Now, although it wasn't a job that you guys were involved in, there was discussions with members of your team that enabled us to make decisions around what is it you need to do? Why would you not go down the route of a particular product that people recommend, and why would you use a charity-specific product? And actually just having someone to go, what do you think? Is there something we're missing here?
Yeah.
Being absolutely invaluable. And I think
Brilliant.
Safeguarding, data protection, understanding things like GDPR, are super important, especially when we're growing, that we are compliant as we go. Because again, it'd be really easy to keep jumping at opportunities without having the right infrastructure behind us.
Yeah. And then again, of course, again, as I sort of said at the beginning, there was if you then have to try and fix something, what it does, it actually slows down the front end of the charity, because you've got to then go, oh, hang on a minute, we've got to do this. So it's actually, as you say, the ebb and flow has to also have some control in it, so that actually things are moving almost at the same pace, that you never get to a point where you go, we have to completely stop because we've done something that needs to be fixed before we can move it forward again. And you talked about data there, and MYTIME as a charity, you've been spreading yourselves in terms of the message has been spreading itself around, and the fantastic work you're doing, and it's been getting bigger. But actually, one of the things there that I think has, from my side, it'd be interesting to understand whether you see it in the same way, but certainly externally, I think, is that the use of data, the use of empirical data and validated information that's come from impact analysis that you've done, which I think is has become a really important thing in the charity space, in terms of there's an awful lot of people that need money these days, as the fight out there for charity money is, as you know, in these times right now, has dwindled. And so therefore it's a really important thing to do, to be able to corral and analyze validated data that you can then put impact statements. And I think some of the impact statements and some of the reporting that you've done has been, congratulations to you guys, because it's been so important that's got you sitting in front of MPs in the House of Parliament.
It's been, if I could put a hook on one thing that's moved us forward, it has been how we use data. And I'm not going to say we've got it perfect either.
No,
we're still evolving. It's evolving. Again, we speak about experts in charity. Yeah, like we've had lots of advisors and people involved, but we haven't got an internal expert for data. We've got someone who's very, very good with data, but we're still learning ourselves.
Yeah,
the data has been the number one thing that's moved us from being we think there's a problem, because at the moment, because no one knows around young carers, schools aren't held to account to record who young carers are. At the time, there was nothing in Ofsted. There was a reference in a safeguarding document that young carers are a group that should be recognised. And then there's people like us and other organisations sort of chirping on in the background.
Yeah.
The small cohort of 6 schools that we collected primary school data from originally, that was so pivotal in going, we thought there was an issue with attendance and attainment and suspensions, and here's the proof. And then here's another set of proof. And they were only small, you're talking 6.
No, but you have to start somewhere.
Have to start somewhere.
And do you know what was really funny when you lensed that result out to the public? The thing that I found was so funny that went along with that conversation. I think it was a conversation that Krista might have had over LinkedIn, or it might have been in a report, but I think it was Krista that I was talking to about this, was the fact that all of the schools that didn't pick this up said, no, we don't have any problem with it. It's 0 or close to 0. And the moment they actually pick up the Level Up program and actually get people within their school and get teachers in their school to start recognising, you go, oh, it's 14%.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that was really funny was that, and again, this I think was Krista, because I think it was at the point that you first went up and met with some of the MPs, which was, isn't it interesting that Dorset has got the highest percentage of young carers in school than any other county in the country? I wonder why that would be. And that's just the most. It's so powerful.
We used to wear it as a really proud badge. That if you think about that data now, we're now 2 or 3 years into the census, where young carers are on the census, but they're a non-statutory field, so you can ignore it. Yeah. There's still 69% of schools saying they don't have young carers across the country.
69?
Yeah. There was only 65,000 young carers identified by the census. Now, if you compare that to the family census that we all fill in every 10 years, so 2021 was the last one, 127,000 young carers that families were telling us were there. So already you're missing half.
Yeah.
We're saying 1 in 10, so you're talking 1 million young people.
Yeah.
Dorset's at about, and BCP at about 4% identification.
Okay, so extrapolate that up.
This disparity between schools, families, communities is still 1 million miles off. And what we are seeing, that the number is coming up, and the number of saying that we haven't got young carers is coming down, which is great. But there's some numbers within those numbers that I think are really important. I think if anyone's listening, trying to contextualize, of those 127,000 young carers on the family census, that's parents filling it in, there are 1,700 5 to 7-year-olds identified by parents who are providing more than 50 hours of care a week. 50. These are year 1, year 2 reception children.
Okay.
I work full-time. I have 2 small kids. Another 50 hours.
Well, working hours directed means that actually you've just blown it out of the water.
It's literally every other hour that isn't spent in school is spent caring. And then that's families, that's parents telling us that. That isn't the child telling us. Yeah. Just every time I think about it, it blows my mind. 1,700 5 to 7-year-olds.
5 to 7.
Yeah.
Let's just put that in context, Ian, guys. You've got kids at home, people 5 to 7-year-olds doing 50 hours of care. That's why this stuff is so important. Yeah, so important. And it also proves that actually, you've really made a dent. But Christ, is there a long way to go?
There is a long way to go, but I think there's some really interesting data that's starting to come out of the sector. And I'm going to big ourselves up, but we are leading elements of that. And we have got some amazing members of our team who have then gone off and done their own research. So we have research into young carers with SEND.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a huge
push on that one now.
SEND written in my...
Yeah. Do you think, just quickly on that, do you see that as a danger in terms of the noise of having to try and deal with SEND against young carers? No, it's all in the same.
I think
place.
If anything, it's going to give us another level, because if there's more SEND provision legislation coming in, and we can keep showing that
you fall into it, you can almost point it and go, yeah, okay.
We're talking on our database alone, we're talking about 2,500 kids. Of those, 38% have their own SEND need as well as being a young carer.
Yeah.
We can get into talking around why, potentially, if you think about some of those young carers might have been young carers, not officially, but I would say officially from birth.
Yeah.
They were born into a family where there's need. Does that parent have the capacity to sit and read and do the developmental work of that young carer? Does that lead to why there's need? We don't know.
Yeah.
But one of our other colleagues, Jo, a big up to Jo, she's done a whole research piece around 0 to 5. So
wow.
It's on our website, so head there, go and have a read of it. It doesn't show that there are lots of young carers out there, but what it does show is that there is an opportunity to put some preventative measure in from early. She's been invited to Malaysia, actually, in a month's time to and deliver at a huge international conference around this piece of work. So we've had that. We've also had work around suspensions and young people in things like APs and PRUs and not in education and the barriers that they... So we're starting to look at the intersectionality of flags that we use with young people, like, are they pupil premium? Are they SEND? Are they boys, girls? Are they over a certain age? And what are the patterns that are coming up with the data? And it's just painting this incredible picture that the young carer space,
it's just more really solid evidence, isn't it, that just helps to move this thing forward.
It can only strengthen anyone's position.
So while we're on that subject, can you lens a little bit about the employability programs? I know we've been involved in the employability program with you, and we found it really, really good fun. And we've done a couple of those things where you've brought a group of people to talk to all sorts of people in the team, and then we've had people here doing stuff as well. I think this is an important thing just for any business that's out there that's either watching or listening this. It's just the most rewarding thing that you could possibly ever want to do, because you're interacting with a group of people who actually, and it's something that you've discussed with me, Dan, which is that these people, because they have to deal with so much, actually they're incredibly employable people, because they're organized, their time management is incredible. Okay, their whole ethos of how they, because it's ingrained in what they do. They're fabulous people to employ, but actually sometimes, because they've been in the SEND register and stuff like that, their academic qualifications absolutely nowhere fits the person. It's the people in themselves. Tell us a little bit about that employability program.
Well, firstly, big shout to Clary, who runs the employability program.
Unbelievable.
Great.
Yeah.
The program in its current form runs a 2-day workshop with young carers from school, bring them out of school to a neutral environment, and they run through a series of workshops in a day. So one of the ones is, what skills do you have as a young carer? And to start with, they have none, obviously. We haven't got any skills. They go through the 2 days of learning. They meet a former young carer. So I tell my story. And my journey through education, they write a CV, they think about the job they want to do when they're older, they have interview practice, they do mock interviews with employers over this 2-day period, and then they get a careers appointment. That's the basis of the course. Then the day in a workplace, which is what you've referenced with NAK in here, is the piece where we take them to, usually it's a split of an educational provider and a workplace. It might be a trip to a university followed by a business like yourself.
Yeah.
And they'll come in and they'll meet different functions within that business, marketing, your sales, sales, tech, and they'll learn different roles that exist. We've been to, there's so many, Hall and Woodhouse, Calcinoto, RNLI, your sales.
I thought that RNLI, that must have been pretty good. That looked lovely.
They're all amazing in their own, they're all different, which I think is really important. Each day that runs is so that Lush is another one that we go to.
Yeah.
The college, BE, Brock College. So, but what it does, it enables young carers to see something that they may have not seen before. A lot of young carers will have a decision in their mind that I can't go to university.
Yeah.
If I move away. Or I need to go to university, but only locally, and that limits the courses that I might do.
Yep.
Or I'll get a job in, a lot of them follow jobs in care.
Yeah.
Because they think that's a skill that they have, which it
absolutely is, yeah.
But what we try to show is that they have more skills. They have reliability. They are
organised.
Good communicators. Yeah, they're organised. But what they do need is an employer who understands flexibility.
Yeah.
And understands that sometimes
there's a primary need there that sometimes will override.
Yeah. And what we're trying to teach the young carers is they have to be really confident in having that conversation with an employer.
Yeah.
If they come to you and actually being really confident, say like, look,
I may have. Yeah.
And some employers will be really good and will enable that, and some won't be as good. And we understand that business function is important, so
that's incredible.
But the employability program enables them to do that course. It doesn't stop there. So they might do the course at 14, 15. They then have access to Clary and her team for 10 years, so until they're 25.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that is, we have a tempo group, which is it's almost like a youth group, but it focuses around life skills and then bringing them together. They will go to additional days out. We'll just run a residential ranger program in a New Forest where they've learned about ranger skills. I think they were hacking rhododendron, God knows what else, but an opportunity that they may have not got otherwise.
Yeah.
And then they can tap into Clary's team all the way through to their 25. They have an interview coming up and they want some help if they are in a place where they're what we call NEAT, so not in education, employment or training, and they're trying to redefine their pathway. They can reach out to Clary and book a one-to-one with her, and she will try and enable some support and signposting. So it isn't just do the program, disappear. It's do the program, and then you have us for when you need us. And a lot of them will do the program, leave school, follow the pathway, might not hear from them.
Yeah.
But we're there.
Yeah. We've walked through so many facets of what MYTIME does in the half an hour that we got. Getting to the end of this, it's always amazing. I every time we talk a bit more about what you do, there are other charities we work with that do that, but when we talk about what you do, I always learn something. I always learn something new. There's always something there which is like, I sort of put that in the back of my mind, but it's really quite in the front of what you do. Dan, thank you very much for spending the time with us. It's been absolutely, and huge applause to the charity. We as an organisation are always in awe with what you do, and the sort of things that you bring to the party. So
thank you.
Wonderful to be here, and anybody that has any affinity to doing charitable work as a business or as a person, that this is a charity that is massively worth a look. So pleasure to have you, man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vicenza Talks podcast. If you've enjoyed the discussion, hit subscribe for more conversation with our community on cybersecurity, AI strategy, and future-focused business thinking. And if you've got questions or want to continue the chat, comment below or email me at sales@vicenza.com.